the biggest threat now to the dollar, and one of the reasons that I think the price of gold could go ballistic, is because I think there is a good chance that on the horizon, this is one of the reasons that I am just super bullish on gold and silver.
What if I told you? The window to buy gold and silver before they skyrocket might be closing faster than anyone thinks. Peter Schiff just dropped some explosive predictions, and he's not holding back. He's warning that gold and silver could go absolutely ballistic, shattering past highs. But here's the twist. Should you be buying right now, or wait for that one last pullback? Have you already missed the train? Or is the biggest opportunity still ahead? Schiff breaks it all down. The reasons behind this unstoppable move, the price targets he sees next, and why the world's financial system could be on the edge of a reset. This isn't just another market update. It's a dramatic roadmap of what could happen to gold and silver in the months ahead. Stay locked in, because Peter Schiff is about to tell you exactly what you need to know before history writes its next chapter.
Gold hit 3,600 today for the first time ever. Price of gold was up 4% on the week. It's now up 37% on the year. 37% for the price of gold. Now, I've been doing my best to get my audience to buy gold, buy silver. Silver was only up 2.8% on the week. I say only. That's still a big week. Silver closed the week just about 41 or just over $41. Gold didn't hold 3,600. It closed, I think, around 35.90-ish. Traders tend to look at these round numbers and take profits. I wouldn't be surprised if on Monday morning, when the U.S. resumes trading, we gap up in the price of gold well beyond 3,600, which is why you shouldn't wait till Monday to buy your gold. In fact, don't even wait till the end of this podcast. If you are listening to me or watching this on YouTube, pause. Just press pause. Don't worry. I'll still be here. Just pause it. Then go to Schiff Gold and buy some gold right now. Finish buying it, then come back and watch the rest of the podcast. That's how important it is, right? I want to make sure that people get aboard this train, right? Unlike the Trump train that's going to end in a wreck, this one has got a long way to go. Again, 41% year-to-date gains in gold. Look at the gold mining stocks. The GDX has now officially doubled on the year. So basically, we're through 8 months of the year, right? And we've had a doubling of the GDX. Double. I remember in April, I put out the special report, the best way to buy gold. And I was, practically begging my gold customers not to buy gold, because I said, you take that money and buy these gold stocks, because I'd never seen them this cheap in my life relative to the price of gold. So I said, below ground gold was such a bargain, you have to buy it rather than the above ground variety. But I also saw the greatest combination of fundamentals that I'd ever seen for the price of gold. And I expect an explosion. Last year was the breakout, 2024, when gold broke above 2,000 and moved up above 3,000. But I think this move is going to mirror, at a minimum, the move from 2001 to 2011, where the price of gold was up sixfold. So if you take sixfold from 2,000, that's $12,000 gold, right? We're barely a third of the way to 12,000 or a fourth of the way to $12,000 gold right now. We are so much closer to the bottom than we are the top. Yeah, I really wanted you guys to buy closer to 2,000, but I don't care. You got to buy it now. Same thing with silver. I was telling everybody 30 was the floor. You got to buy $30 silver. There was minimal downside risk. We barely ever went below it after I said that. And now we're buying $40 silver, $41 silver. The problem is, and I've talked to the guys at Schiff Gold, and I've talked to people I know at other gold companies where sales are slow. People just don't want to buy the high. Well, you know what? You got to get used to buying the high. If you don't buy the high, you're not buying gold and silver. You got to buy the high because we're going higher. And the longer you wait to buy the higher the high you're going to buy. So you might as well buy it now, because if you wait you're just going to pay a higher price. That doesn't mean you're never going to get a down day or a down week, but it's not worth waiting. You got to just read the writing on the wall here and recognize the historic nature of what is going on. In fact, even Bukele of El Salvador, right, the Bitcoin guy, just announced that he bought $50 million worth of gold for El Salvador, right? He was poo-pooing gold a few years ago when he was buying Bitcoin. Now, instead of buying more Bitcoin, he bought $50 million worth of gold. Congratulations. I'm glad to see that. Now, if he could just sell his Bitcoin and buy even more gold, that would even be a better deal. By the way, Bitcoin was barely up today, in the face of a big move up in gold. In fact, year to date, Bitcoin is only up about 18%. I mean, that's not bad, 18%, but gold's up 37%. Bitcoin's supposed to be up a lot more than gold. It's supposed to be a turbocharged version. It's supposed to be gold on steroids, right? But it's only up. And it could easily finish the year negative. But the more important statistic on Bitcoin, again, Bitcoin is 15% lower today than it was at its peak priced in gold in 2021. That's almost 4 years ago. 4 years of 15% decline. We're almost in a bear market in the gold price of Bitcoin. This, despite all the Bitcoin ETFs buying up all this Bitcoin. They didn't exist 4 years ago, right? The NFT craze hadn't hit yet. All the Super Bowl ads, all the celebrity endorsements. We didn't have all these Bitcoin treasury companies. MicroStrategy hadn't loaded up on all this Bitcoin, tens of billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and now all the copycat Bitcoin treasury companies didn't exist. We didn't have the Bitcoin president, right? We didn't have the strategic Bitcoin reserve. We didn't have a Bitcoin czar, right? So none of this existed 4 years ago, right? Yet despite all this, Bitcoin is down 15% against gold. And these hodlers are oblivious to all of this. They just look back to the very beginning of Bitcoin and talk about how much it's up. And they don't look at what's been happening over the last 4 years and question why, right? Gold has this huge move. It's doing exactly what you would expect it to do in the face of a Fed that's about to ease into rising inflation. But why isn't Bitcoin doing that? Why is Bitcoin behaving differently? Why is it following risk assets and not gold if it's digital gold? But people are so wedded to this cult that they don't even bother to question their own beliefs. They just assume as long as they hodl forever, they'll make it to the promised land, right? They've believed the Messiah. They just got to have faith, and they have to ignore all of the other realities that would cast doubt. But I don't know why Bukele decided to buy some gold. Maybe he's starting to lose a little confidence because he obviously could have bought more Bitcoin, but he didn't do that. So good for him, right? For coming over to the right side. But I think the biggest thing, and I'm going to make this point right now, I think the biggest threat now to the dollar, and one of the reasons that I think the price of gold could go ballistic, is because I think there is a good chance that the Supreme Court is going to side with Donald Trump in his ability to fire Lisa Cook, a Fed governor. Now, the only way that the court could really come to that determination, right, it's not going to be to rule that based on having an independent Fed where the governors serve with 12-year terms and they have employment contracts and that presidents can't really fire them unless there is a legitimate cause, right? Not just because they feel that they have a cause, but there is a demonstrable legitimate cause. And cause generally has to do with something you've done on the job, right? Something dereliction of duty, right? Not something that was dug up in your past because they went on a fishing expedition looking for dirt, right? And they finally dug something up, and they said, you lied on a mortgage application, right? The only way I think that the Supreme Court could approve this is if they actually rule on the independence of the Fed. And they rule that a truly independent Fed is unconstitutional, which I believe it is. I never believed that the Federal Reserve Act would hold up to constitutional scrutiny, but it was never really challenged. But I don't think that the creation of what really amounts to, right, a banking cartel that has a monopoly on issuing these Federal Reserve notes, which are then going to be legal tender, I don't think it's authorized. I mean, the Constitution has 3 branches of government, not 4, right? The Federal Reserve is not a branch of the government, right? You have the judicial branch, you have the executive, and you have the legislative. So if the Fed really exists independent of any oversight, it would effectively be like maybe another branch of government. But there's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes this. So I think the Supreme Court might say, you know, the only way the Fed is constitutional is if it's subject to the oversight of some elected official, like the President of the United States. Now, the President of the United States is allowed to nominate the FOMC members. So why can't he fire them? He gets to pick them. Why can't he get rid of them? Right? That is the example of the camel's nose under the tent, right? The slippery slope. You never allow the government an inch, because once they get that inch, they're going to take a mile, right? So we did a lot of damage by opening the window. That's why, you know, this bank should have been shut down. But the problem is where we are now, having Congress or the president controlling the paper money supply is worse than having the Fed do it. And, you know, people think, hey, Peter, why are you defending the Fed? I'm not defending the Fed. I'm the Fed's biggest critic. I just think it'll be even worse when it's being controlled by the president, right? As bad as the Fed has been when it had a modicum of independence, imagine how what's worse is going to be when it has none. But this is the threat that is looming on the horizon. This is one of the reasons that I am just super bullish on gold and silver and incredibly bearish on the U.S. dollar. The dollar index closed, I think, at 97.7. I think this is the weakest close of the year for the dollar index. Look, it's going a lot lower, but nobody is talking about this yet. They will once the Supreme Court rules, right? But nobody is really talking about it now, other than me. I haven't heard anybody else mentioning the possibility of this happening and why it might happen. And yes, I think the Supreme Court is right that the current Fed as constructed was unconstitutional, but what they are going to create is going to be even more unconstitutional than what they strike down. But they're not going to get that, right? They're not going to go far enough. And so the small right is going to lead to a greater wrong.
If this shook you the way it should, don't just watch and walk away. Smash that like button so more people wake up to what's coming. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Because the next time Peter Schiff drops a bombshell, you'll want to be the first to know. History is being written right now. Make sure you don't miss the next chapter.